Welcome to What Works, where nonprofit leaders share real stories about what makes impact possible and how to really make their organizations thrive. I'm your host, Marla Moody, and today we're going to explore so much fun about using therapy, horses and therapy, to really stretch the imagination of how healing can work. My guest is Paula Del Giudice, a visionary and creative, mission driven leader who more than 20 years of nonprofit experience has given herself to the wisdom. She's been on board of directors and strategy plannings and fundraising and campaign management and communications. She has a host of experience and a host of energy. Um, Paula has done it all, really. She knows from building strong leadership teams and teams to public speaking. And we're going to hear from you today, Paula. Paula, tell us what works. If you wouldn't
Oh,
mind introducing yourself. How's that for an
thanks,
introduction?
Marla. Try to live up to that introduction. Um, I'm executive director of Little Bit Therapeutic Writing Center in Redmond, Washington. We provide equine assisted services for people with disabilities. Our mission statement is that we are a community where horses transform the bodies, minds, and spirits of people with disabilities. I'm going to stop and say that again because I need to have our mission statement accurate.
Okay. So, Paula, tell
Our
us.
missions
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Our mission statement is that Little Bit Therapeutic Riding Center is a community where horses transform the bodies, minds, and spirits of people with disabilities.
Paula, I love that. And I think I told you last time we were together that I had to draw a picture once of like what I would love to do. And it was a ranch with horses to do just what you're doing. More on the healing emotional harms and stuff. So when I knew I got to talk to you, I was just so very excited. What
Oh,
is
thank
it?
you so much.
That's awesome. What is it about the nonprofit sector that draws you?
Wow. I got started it's been almost 40 years ago since I got started with nonprofits. Even then, even before that, when I was in high school, I was the state president of the Future Business Leaders of America. And that was sort of my first experience. And I do like running things, so that helps. um, but what I found with my nonprofit experience is that it engages so many different areas of my skills, my interests, and my talents. So that's why I've stayed throughout my career involved with nonprofits, and then the last 20 plus years running nonprofits. It's either the regional director or the executive director of 4 different organizations.
What have you seen change over time with all that experience that you've had?
Well, a lot has changed in our society in those years. I remember, so one of my first nonprofit volunteer gigs was I was the first woman chair of the board of the National Wildlife Federation in its 63-year history. And people shake their heads when they think about that as even a possibility in this day and age. And so there were glass ceilings back then, and those have been shattered in many, many significant ways. So that's a big one. The other thing that I've seen is that there are more educational tracks that are available to people who are interested in nonprofit work. So the level of professionalism that we're seeing in upcoming leaders has really grown and changed in the past 15 years or so. Many people that didn't have those options certainly weren't available to me when I started my nonprofit work. uh, my background is I have a business degree and I have a master's in education, so those were also, what I learned through those experiences were very helpful in what I'm doing now. But now we see people who are interested in working in nonprofits and having that educational track that better informs them and better prepares them to be the leaders now and for the future.
I love that. My passion is leadership development. So, um, knowing that that has changed and even that you see it, the intentionality of knowing that developing leaders make not only better outcomes, but better team.
Yeah,
As you're
exactly. The
thinking
other thing
through,
that I've noticed, so one other thing that I've noticed is that running nonprofits is now seen more as a profession instead of something that somebody just decides to do because they have the goodness of their heart. So you'll see a change and growth in salaries and benefits for nonprofit leaders that just were not as prevalent back in the days. So even small nonprofits are paying better wages and have better benefits, and there's more professionalism associated with the nonprofit management that didn't happen in the past as much. I mean, there were clearly that happened in the large nonprofits, large national nonprofits, and others. But I've seen that growth happening for smaller nonprofits in the past number of years.
huh, that's really insightful. When I was an operations leader overseas, especially in Central Asia and North Africa, we realized our staff in countries didn't have any retirement plan, didn't have any medical. Largely, a lot of the countries that just don't have insurance and things like that. So we had to develop our own for our company, our own retirement plan and medical plan and things like that because like you said, there's one thing about volunteering and you have a backdrop of other things, but when you dedicate your whole life and don't have even medical and health, I know that some people don't even want to sponsor you because they feel like, well, we're going to have to provide for you until you die instead of provide for you while you're working. So that's really insightful and important. I think sometimes we forget that we don't have to have a poverty mindset to be able to do good work.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it comes to finding talent, and I do know sometimes um, to woo people into the talent, we want quality people to come. Sometimes it's hard to find them, and other times it's also hard to keep them. What are things you've seen in that area?
So our organization has 63 employees and in a variety of different roles, but we have a couple different professional roles that are really important and sort of challenging to find staff. And one of the things that's made a difference, well, there are two areas that I can talk about. One that's made a difference, and this is our industry, the therapeutic riding industry. The executive director at PATH International, which is the Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship, and
Hmm.
they certify centers like ours. And one of the things they've noticed in terms of their ability for centers like ours around the country to find instructors, those are the individuals who work in sort of a classroom setting around learning horseback riding skills for people with disabilities, is that since COVID, people have learned that they can work in different ways. They can work from home, and many people enjoyed that opportunity and decided not to go back to working in an office. And for us, we can't do um, we have to have people in the arenas. It can't be a remote position. So finding those individuals and then having them go through the training and trying to find instructors that are skilled or trained or certified is a challenge for us. And the other thing that we're still working on and trying to grow is that, as I mentioned, that salaries are increasing and benefits are increasing. When we are in an area of the country where it's very expensive to live here. So trying to, in our therapists, which are licensed physical therapists, occupational therapists, or speech and language pathologists, and the 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 salary ranges in the community, we have to meet those salary ranges if we're going to employ and retain staff of that education and stature and experience. And that we're always a step behind, it seems, because many people have the nonprofit mindset that we don't have professional wages and we don't have strong benefit programs. And so it started that people were expected to take lower salaries. And we're trying to get over that mindset and build those salary ranges so we can compete in the marketplace. And that's been a challenge too.
Yeah.
Retention is another issue, and the salary piece and benefits is a retention issue. There are some other things too, um, that our organization has worked carefully. Uh, engaging employees and trying to make sure that people feel like they're really engaged with the organization. In some ways it's easy, in some ways it's more challenging. In the ways that are easy is that people love to work here because of our mission, but there's compassion fatigue, there's stress related to it, there's all kinds of things that are related to the professional work that we do that sometimes makes it challenging to retain individuals. um, but we've also engaged in trying to change the culture of the staff and the organization to be forward thinking. So we do all of our reviews, our employee reviews are all more of a coaching model. We use catalytic coaching. It's a forward thinking model instead of like, how did you do this year? We'll give you an 8 or a 9 instead of a 10. And that is not really helpful for the employee. And so many
Right.
wonderful things have come out of those conversations with our leaders and their staff that help them feel engaged and valued, and those are really important. There's some work we've done with the Gallup organization around employee engagement, and there's a survey that Gallup does around employee engagement. We've used that for a few years to increase and use the metrics around how we are engaging our employees. And then we also are building a strengths based culture. That catalytic coaching part feeds into
Mm-hmm.
this because you're looking at a positive model about how to engage people, like using their Gallup strengths. It used to be Strengths Finder, to understand what people's strengths are and help them engage with, well, understand themselves as leaders and engage with others in the organization as leaders. And this is the first year that we're rolling the strengths assessment out to all of our staff, not just our leadership team. So we're doing things like that, other fun things to try and make sure people feel engaged and are having a good time. And so there are many things that we're doing to try and drive that retention and the employee satisfaction.
Yeah, I feel that real tension, right? You need the quality, but that price difference. But yeah, I love that you're using different things out there. I'm very familiar with Gallup. I really think that's a wise tool to use as a team, and knowing yourself, especially knowing someone that you might not know how to leverage. You don't know why they always have to, do it this way. But once you start understanding that, it's just seeing how you can raise them up. And the fact that you are expanding it from the leaders to everybody, it sounds like you're working towards that everybody's a leader in their own right. Maybe not an uppercase L, but a lowercase as well.
For
Um,
sure, absolutely.
Um, one thing when you come to as you were talking, like the diversity of what you have, because you have obviously administrators, you have different types of therapists, you have people that I'm sure just like taking care of property, taking care of the horses, like the diversity of what you guys are doing, even though it's a single focused mission, is quite large. When with as operations, I always felt like, you had IT and finance and legal, and sometimes it was hard to make a team because they're like, well, I'm doing my little thing over here and you're doing your thing over here, even though the mission was the same. What type of How do you do communication so that people communication activities to make people feel like they're part of a bigger picture or connect with others?
So I think that's really important to happen. And I think our leaders, so all of our department managers and directors are on our leadership team, and they're all my direct reports. And I think some of the ways that they talk to their staff and how we communicate with individuals um, overall really makes a difference. So for instance, our development director talks about how if the if the instructors in the arena or the therapists in the arena working with our patients and our riders, if they're not doing great work and they're not being successful, then the development department can't do their work. And our accounting manager is critical to all the work that we do because she keeps everybody on the straight and narrow. And keeps everything moving in that direction. So that helps us be really successful. And yes, we're a large organization. We have a $3.7 million budget. So it's one of the largest centers like ours in the country. By budget size, we're in the top 5 in the entire country. So we're the largest center in Washington State. And and we've been very successful by being very fiscally responsible.
Hmm.
But everything is interconnected, and it's the work that we all do together that makes us successful like that. And everyone has to feel like they have that important piece that makes us successful. And our community, when we've been around for a while too, so it's not we're celebrating our 49th year and anniversary this year, so 50th next year. So we've been at this for a while, and we've built a large community, and we try to keep them involved, and we communicate with them, and but we talk about how our volunteers. We have over 300 volunteers that we depend on every week, and we communicate with them about their importance. And from the bottom, those working in the arenas, all the way to our board members. So everybody feels like they have a critical piece of what it does, what it takes to be successful.
So what I'm hearing is you're keeping communication, being very mindful of communication and clarity of communication, which goes back to some of your background, I guess, as well. But how critical it is. And even forgot about the volunteers, but 300 volunteers a week.
Yep.
Wow. That's kind of like herding cats, huh?
I'm not the cat herder, but yes, that's it. It can be because the volunteers don't have to show up for a paycheck. They do the work out of the goodness of their heart. But if they didn't, if they're not a part of that, then nobody could afford our services. If we had to pay people to help in the arenas or to help out on the property, then we nobody could afford our services.
Yeah.
So because of we do charge fees uh, for our participants, but they pay less than 40% of what it costs to provide the services, because the business that we have is very expensive.
Yeah.
Horses are expensive, and we have 32 horses on our property right now, and they eat a lot and do a lot of other things that require that management. Um, and they're a critical part too. And so all the communication strategies are around making sure everyone feels like their role is really critical to our success.
Yeah. I love that. And the fact that you have built that community and that there's so many volunteers shows that you're showing value, and that the mission, the reason you're doing it is worth it. But to make it affordable, for people who, especially there's a lot of people who need it that just don't have the resources. So I just want to thank you for that. It's just my heart to care for the people who need to be cared for. And sometimes those are the ones that the need it the most can have it the least. So I love that model.
Sure.
You
We also have tuition aid that our donors are wonderful. And, obviously they are a large part of making sure that we can make our services affordable.
yeah,
And we have a tuition aid program. So even those that can't afford that 35% of the fees cover, the donors help provide tuition aid that donors, individuals, and foundations and others uh, provide the resources so that we can help those who can't even afford the low cost that we provide.
that's wonderful. Thank you, donors.
Yes, indeed.
When before you were talking, when about retention, but the fatigue, the care fatigue, it's true in nonprofits that burnout can be a real thing, right? The mission is so important. There's usually not these 9 to 5 rules. It our personal gets blended with our professional, and it's kind of the animal that we live in with that nonprofit work. But but burnout is really an important thing to look at, both from retention point of view. So I'd love to know from you, especially with your vast experience on boards and leading different things, is how do you recognize burnout and maybe even catch it before it happens, both for you and your team, I'd say.
Um, That's a really great question. And the burnout is real. The compassion fatigue is real because we see some challenging things. Individuals have such positive attitudes, but so many challenging conditions. For individuals, and our participants range in age from 2 in therapy up to 90, or 5
Wow,
in adaptive riding up to, we don't age out. So caregivers are another part of that, and so we try to provide support for them. Um, One of the things that's really important to me as the executive director is I try to recognize it with my staff, and I encourage my staff, and hope they encourage their staff members to take care of themselves and to balance their work, provide this really good work life balance. um, and it's different for everybody. I have our volunteer director, um, director of volunteer engagement, has recently been on maternity leave, and she's been able to bring. She comes to work with her baby on her front pack, and she does amazing work, but she doesn't have to make the decision about coming to work or leaving her child. She can do both and be effective, and maybe more effective. She's not worrying about what's happening out there. And it's different for everybody because not everybody has a young family, but we have staff members who have older parents that they're taking their caregivers for. So I'm trying to be really cautious and careful, and try to encourage them to balance their families are really important, and if they don't balance that, then they're not going to be effective here, and we are going to burn them out, and we can't retain them. And one of the things too is that by providing those opportunities, I recognize that we may not be the highest paid salary in the community. And we all would love to make more money. I mean, who wouldn't? But by having the balanced lifestyle that they want and need, and balancing out their backgrounds and the areas that they need support in, and giving them the time and flexibility to engage with other interests or to take care of family members or whatever that is, it sort of balances out the little bit lower income levels that they have. So I'm really proud of being able to support them in that way. We do have. It's interesting because we have of those 63 women on our staff. I think 63 people, 60 of them are women, and
Oh,
so
wow.
oftentimes part of that is because we don't pay the higher salaries that someone who's a full time family support person they may not be able to afford to work in this area. Um, but they also oftentimes will have different kind of family requirements than others might, and so I try to support them with whatever they need to be successful in their both their professional and personal careers, so that we retain them, and we have really good retention rates. So I'm proud of that.
That's really shows a lot, to have that much pressure with the finances and stuff and having the retention rate. One word that I kept coming to mind as you were talking is that flexibility to work around a life. I think
Yeah,
sometimes, and as leaders, we can be guilty of it, is you see the task and you see what needs to get done, and it's easy to forget the fact that they had to leave their, elderly parent at home, or they were up all night with their kid, or,
right.
life happens. And for people not only to want to show up to work, but especially in the kind of work you're doing where there's a lot of care and attention, and we harm people when we're not doing well or not rested.
Sure.
And so what a wonderful thing to go to care for people wholly and give them that ability to show up their best at work. So I love that.
Yeah, thank you. And then the other thing too is that some people may look at our staff and say, wow, you're all it's all women who run the, and I'm like, yes, we are strong, capable women who have been running this organization, for mostly women who've been running this organization since its inception. And so we put it out there as a positive because it's great. And we have some amazing staff people who are significant leaders in their own right.
Ah, how exciting. I'd love to meet him sometime.
Well, come on out.
Okay. Hey, I have a question.
Sure.
You've been significantly leading, and you even mentioned that you were the first executive director of the National Wildlife
I was the first woman chair of their board.
Chair of their board. So you have a lot of experience as a woman leader. I have some uh, being an area operations leader for Central Asia. I have a little bit too, where a woman. I think I was the first woman area operations leader. So there is that resistance, but I would love for you to encourage women leaders, maybe both executive leaders and those that might be leaders and they don't even know it. They've never been believed in. What would you want to tell them?
So in the nonprofit sector, I think so. I can advising about being in a role similar to an executive director or CEO is to now when they can get the education that gives them the foot forward because it's widespread now. So many people will have that education. So making sure that they have the kind of education that they can get, because there's so many parts of being a strong leader in a nonprofit. You need to know the financial side is absolutely critical for success in the role that I have. And you need to know have the communications piece, and you need this, staff management. There's so many different roles that are wrapped into an executive leadership role that are really important. I think one of the reasons why I've been able to be so successful is that, as I've shared with you, I've been on boards nonstop since I was in my early 20s. I'm not going to tell you how many years that's been, but since my early 20s, and many different types of nonprofits. community, social service nonprofits, religious boards, basically leadership roles with communities, parish, environmental nonprofits, arts nonprofits, and every single one has built as into my skills. My kind of backpack of skills that I've developed through the years, and I use those skills all the time and those experiences. And so I met with someone yesterday who was really interested in being executive director someday, and I suggested, first of all, having experience with a variety of different organizations, you get to learn how other organizations operate. So you're not just narrowly focused on what you know. You have a broader view, and having different roles that you can gain by being on a nonprofit board, and everybody needs board members.
Mhm.
There's a lot of need out there for talented board members, and you can learn a lot by learning how to read financials, learning how to work with people. There's so many skills you can develop by serving on a board. So I think that's the advice I would give someone is to have the education, have the variety of roles, and not be afraid step into step up for a role that you may not feel qualified for. And here's the example was a lot of my salaried positions with nonprofits. I was in the kind of the environmental sector, and a lot of nonprofits will hire only within their sector, and little bit is not in the environmental sector. And I thought, well, they probably won't hire me because I'm not in the social services sector. I did have horse experience in my background. I had no experience in working with people with disabilities. But I thought, if I don't throw my hat in the ring, then of course they're not going to hire me and they won't even know about me. So I threw my hat in the ring and went through a rather grueling interview process. But by the time the last interview, I walked out of here in tears, I have to admit, because I wanted this job so much. Because it's just, we have miracles that happen here. Um, and that's one of the really cool things about being a nonprofit. And this one in particular, because we see changes happening every day. When you're in the environmental sector, it's the long game, because the work you're doing oftentimes doesn't happen overnight. But here, we see people making improvements every single day here, and that's really heartwarming for me.
Oh, that sounds like a wonderful place to close, even though I have 50 other questions scrolling in my head. But you see changes every day. You're making people's lives better. And that's a beautiful thing. Thank you for doing it. I love the idea that everything you've done in the past has helped you get to where you are. Not just like, look at me, but the impact you're making on lives around you, on your leadership team, on everybody that's working there, all 63 people, plus the 300 volunteers. You confidently, or maybe look confident, maybe it wasn't always, but you chose to step ahead. I love that you said, you know, you might not get hired if you throw in your hat in the ring, but you definitely won't get hired if they don't know about you. So I've heard that women sometimes look at the list and say, I'm not qualified, where men are like, well, I can do the job. There's much more willing to do that. So thank you for being an example of being a learner and being serving in so many different ways. And as you're serving, you just are gaining that knowledge and experience. So
Yeah,
thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
I was going to share learner's one of my top five skills, my strengths. But can I share a story with you? Because I love this
I
story.
I
Because a
would
lot
love
of
that.
people, we've talked a lot about the leadership and the business side of it, but we haven't talked about, well, why horses? And I always think that that's something that people like to know about, and maybe people don't. People understand how valuable that relationship between animals and people are. But let me give you an example of a story where one of our horses was just really amazing. So we have a horse named Lou, and I always thought Lou looked like the corgi of the horse world because his legs look like they're too short to be that he just was put together wrong. But we had a leader who was leading him from the halter rope at his head, and it was a therapy session. So we had the therapist always is on the left hand side of the horse. There's a sidewalker responsible for the safety of the individual on the right hand side, and then there's another header who it's called a header position who opens gates and hands toys and that sort of thing. So they were walking out on. We have a big loop around the paddock, around our paddocks, where the horses go outdoors. And on this particular day, everyone likes to ride outdoors. So we have arenas when when we have inclement weather, but everyone likes to ride outdoors. So this particular day, Lou reached out and kind of grabbed at the shirt of the person who was leading him, and she's like, well, that's kind of weird. And then Lou reached out again and grabbed the shirt and held on and planted his feet. And at that same time, just as that was happening, the patient on Lou's back started to have a seizure.
Mm,
And
wow.
so he knew that that was about to happen. And he was telling them, whoa, everybody, you need to hold on while this young person is suffering from the seizure. And so they were able to attend to the patient without, and that person had seizure disorder. So we knew about that was part of their makeup. But he was telling us we need to stop and you take care of the patient. So they're so sensitive. We've had horses that's so good at the job that they do, and they're so sensitive to what's going on with their riders and patients. The really, really top notch horses that are good at therapy will do that. It's really incredible.
The intuitiveness of a horse and the power and yet meekness of a horse. Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you for that story. And that's such a good visual. And, being outside and having a horse and having that attention and but the order of it too, right? There's that organic movement but there's always the therapist on one side and the different roles and how everybody's working together to really care for that patient. So wonderful. Thank you for including that story.
Oh, my
Is
pleasure.
is there anything you want to tell people about, like, how do they could get involved, or if they want to be both financially or volunteer, or maybe they want to start it themselves? What do you want to leave people with?
Well, I'm always happy to answer any questions anybody has. And if you would like to email me, my email is paulad@littlebit.org. Our website is littlebit.org, and there are opportunities to donate there. There's opportunities to see about more information about our horses, about our staff, about how to become involved as a volunteer, about how to be involved as a rider or patient. So lots of information. There's some wonderful stories on our blog section you can find it littlebit.org/blogs or blog, maybe not plural. And there are a lot of stories there and videos there that you can see that are really pretty cool. So I'm always happy to steer people in the right direction if they have an interest. And I hope that this is impactful for people.
Wonderful, Paula. And we'll put that in the show notes so that people can access that again. So well worth looking at. So thank you so much. We're going to end here, and um, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you, Marla. I really enjoyed meeting you and being able to share my story with those who watch your blog.
Awesome. Thank you.